This is Scott Cofield, and this is the 2012-2013 State of Our Schools presentation for Aniana City Schools. This presentation is mostly about our plan of excellence. We do have a guiding principle here at Aniana where we are committed to excellence, and we have a vision where we want to be a great school system that also lives in a great community. Part of that vision is the goal to achieve excellence within each one of our 9 essential strands that you see listed here. Part of our belief system is that if your child attends our school system, we want to make sure that they are safe, that they are provided a rigorous curriculum, have great educators, are exposed to the technology that prepares them for a global world and to be competitive in that world, to be exposed to extracurricular activities that build character and leadership, to provide the adequate staffing, adequate facilities, that they go to school in a community that supports their endeavors to be successful in school, and that appropriate planning is in place. Let's look at some of our vital signs and essential strands to determine where we are at this time. You'll see a lot of comparative groups in this presentation. We are constantly looking at ourselves compared to other high-performing systems to ensure that we are performing at a level that meets our expectations. You'll see GBPJ, that will be the combined average of Guntersville, Boaz, Piedmont, and Jacksonville. TOCA is Trussville, Oxford, Coleman, and Albertville. And then we look at the 25 other small city school systems that are very similar to us, as well as looking at state averages and national averages. Here are a list of the other 25 school systems that you will see us compare, especially revenues and expenditures, things of those nature, that are very similar to Aniana, the Sheffields and Dalevilles and Genevas and Roanoke's and Thomasvilles of the world, whose situations are very similar to ours. We've also looked at the other high-performing small city school systems through the Public Affairs Research Council of Alabama, or PARCA. And what we've discovered is that Aniana is very similar to those situations in their demographic groupings. You see the majority of our student population is white, which is very similar to those high-performing school systems with a poverty rate that's in the average range. We're at 44%. You see the range there in the averages of those other systems. The only thing that is different is that our Hispanic population is a little larger than most of those other high-performing small city school systems. Let's look at school safety. We feel good about our implementation level here, especially our facilities. We think Aniana City Schools is a healthier environment now with some of the improvements we've done as far as putting in new ceiling tiles and lighting and a new roof. We've also added security cameras to our buses, so we feel pretty good that most of our equipment is in place. Coordination with our city is very good as far as fire and police, so we feel pretty good about school safety. The issues we're still working on, our traffic flow. We still like to get a lot of that traffic off Highway 75 in the morning and the afternoons. We're constantly looking at our buses to make sure we're overcrowding. And awareness and treatment of social and mental issues is something that we would like to start a school social worker program here at Aniana City Schools. Looking at curriculum, great educators, and technology, let's kind of take all 3 of those essential strands at one time. We were very proud in spring of 2011 that PARCA, the research group in Alabama, when they did their study of high-performing school systems in the state, as you can see on the left, there were 5 school systems. ARAB through Muscle shows that in 100% of the academic indicators that they looked at were well above state averages. You see that Aniana had 88% of our academic indicators were higher than state averages. There were only 7 school systems higher than that, so basically we were ranked 8th or tied for 8th out of 132 school systems in this study. So very well done from our staff and students. This is just an AYP report that shows all green cells. Basically we met AYP. Of course AYP does measure minimum standards. Our graduation rate is listed here. Last year we were at 88%, the year before at 98%. That is something that we're constantly working on. We do strive to keep that above 90%. Early literacy skills, as measured by DIBELS, Dynamic Indicators of Basic Early Literacy Skills, is an assessment that we use. Over 90% of our kids score at low risk, which is about 10 points above the guideline, with less than 4% of our students scoring at risk by the end of the year. Very good. Here's a comparison of our the percentage of our students who are proficient in reading in grades 3 through 8. As you can see, Aniana is represented by the red cell there. 94% of our kids, which is about 8 points higher than the state average, also higher than our competitive groups, which is the combined averages of Guntersville, Boaz, Piedmont, and Jacksonville, and then the Trussville, Oxford, Coleman, Albertville average. But we just don't look at proficiency. We also have exceeding the standards in reading, scoring at the highest level. 70% of our kids scored there in reading, which is 15 points higher than the state average and also above our comparison groups. Let's look at math proficiency. 88% proficient in math, doing well compared to the state and being competitive. And exceeding the standards, 54% of our students are exceeding the standards, again higher than state averages, and also competitive with our other groups, although the blue group there has moved a little higher. Our graduation rate, as you can see, 88%, 16 points higher than the state average. And we look at the percentage of our students who are enrolled in higher education. As you can see here, 62% of our kids move on and enrolled in higher education. This was counting the fall of 2011 kids that moved into higher ed. That is 9 points higher than state average. We also want to look at those students who are moving on to a 4-year college, and our numbers are very strong here. 42% of our kids, very impressive, on to a 4-year college, some 17 points higher than the state average and also higher than our comparative groups. When they get to college, what percentage of those students are having to take remediation courses as defined by whatever institution they are attending? And you can see here 26% of our kids, 9 points less than the state average, which is where you want to be, is less, have to take remediation courses. Now let's look at those who attend a 4-year college and take remediation courses. 14% of those kids, where the state average is at 17. Here are our ACT scores by the time kids graduated in the year 2012. Also you see 8th grade scores, 10th grade scores, and then by the time they become a graduate. So at Aniana, the 8th grade, they're scoring at 16, which is higher than the national average. We have no way of knowing what the state scores are. That's not reported to us. Also, 10th grade outperforming national averages. And it's one thing to note, we give this to every one of our 8th and 10th graders. That may not be occurring across the nation. And you see our graduates, by the time they get there, 22.2 is the average ACT score. That is above both the state and national average. We look at college readiness by subject area, and you can see we are performing very well in English. 81% of our students are prepared for college as determined by the ACT, well above state and national averages. Math, still above state and national averages, as is reading and science. And when you look at all four combined, 35% of our students in all were above or considered college ready in all four standards, which is higher also than the state national averages. So as you can see from this chart, doing very well in English and reading, also in math, and even though our scores are lower in science, still above the state averages and national averages. Here's our college readiness in 10th grade. As you can see, we don't have state scores here, just national averages, and in 8th grade as well, again showing that we are very strong in English and reading, being competitive in math and science, but that is an area that we would like to show some improvement. Our teachers are telling us that they feel like we're heading in the right direction. This is a good place to work. We're proud of that. Let's look at our curriculum. What we said when we put our plan of excellence together, in that almost any academic area that you look at, we're considered to be a high-performing school system. Things that we need to improve on is to improve our professional development and training, alignment of our curriculum, and looking at best practice strategies regarding effective instruction and authentic learning. So what we've said are those are things we want to look at: aligning our curriculum to college standards, making sure we're providing effective instruction, authentic learning, exposing our kids more to technology, real life situations, and focusing more on quality professional development, whether that be instructional focus teams or teacher academies or other programs. Technology, we're proud of what of the accomplishments that we've made with technology. We've built this program from scratch. We have people wanting to implement new technologies. Our weakness is that we did not have the infrastructure, the personnel to manage the support, or the financial capacity to begin a major technology initiative, or what we call a one-to-one, where every kid has a laptop or an iPad or some sort of technological device to make learning authentic for them. Let me give you some updates and issues regarding these three essential strands. Basically, the State Department has Plan 2020. Our new state superintendent, Dr. Tommy Bice, who has a lot of lofty goals. A part of that are the new math and English language arts college and career ready standards that have been adopted to make sure our kids are college and career ready. So we've started implementation of those math standards. We are gearing up for language arts coming next year. We've dedicated more of some of our federal funding for staff training. We've also, for the first time ever, going to have a full-time gifted teacher. And as you can see, about 8.4% of the students at Oneonta City Schools are considered gifted, which is higher than the state average. And you compare us to the other 25 small city school systems, we have the 6th highest percentage of gifted students. So we felt the need to move that position to a full-time position. We've also added to our wireless infrastructure. We've started a SmartBoard initiative in kindergarten through 3rd grade, and we have still been investigating and listening to other school systems concerning their technology implementation. Issues for us: this college and career ready standards is a major shift for our teachers. It's really changing the standards that we're teaching. They are more difficult, more rigorous. We have new assessments and accountability plans coming down from the State Department with this Plan 2020. New projects for counseling. So lots of changes, especially at the high school level. Technology, that's a huge issue. Where are we going with textbooks? Will we see textbooks as we know them 5 years from now? What about equitable student access, making sure all of our kids have the access that they need for technology? Making sure our teachers are trained properly, that we have the hardware and the software. Those are all big issues for us this year. And a part of that, you're going to see what we're calling One Vision. This is our technology initiative. This is the plan that we would like to see implemented at Oneonta City Schools. It is a vision for the future. It does involve a one-to-one initiative so that every child has the technology that allows them to compete and be successful. What does it include? Our plans: we would like to put a laptop in the hands of every student in high school, an iPad for our kids in the middle grades 4 through 6, and also expose those kids to laptop labs and iPad labs for kindergarten and 3rd grade. Also giving each teacher with a laptop and the ability to project, to have wireless projection in their classroom, and of course the training that would need to come with that. You're talking about $500,000 a year, leasing the equipment through Apple, adding the personnel, the technicians and the coordinators to run such a program, putting in a learning management system, which is what students in college are having to use, and also some other miscellaneous costs for protective cases and either insurance or replacement cost. Extracurricular. The strengths of Oneonta City Schools, it does provide our students with many opportunities that you normally would see in larger school systems. We also compete at a level that meets the high expectations of our community, whether it be in athletics, the band programs, or different academic teams. Our weaknesses: We have very little flexibility in our staff to meet the growing demands of coaches and sponsors. We had a banner year in 2011 and 2012. Athletically, 11 of our teams reached the playoffs. Our football team did great, played for the state championship. Boys went to the Final Four in basketball and baseball. Our girls basketball team set a school record for the most wins. Boys won the state championship in golf. 2 state track records. It was really an unbelievable year. Also, our band, I think this year we have the largest band, or the second largest band in our school history, probably the largest band in 4A, 140 something members. We expect to even have a larger band next year. Our band always competes and is very successful in their competitions. Our academic competition teams, very successful. We won the state championship last year with our science team. Our drama productions are very successful, and our yearbook is something that you would see at a much larger high school or even college type level. Extracurricular are important. It's interesting to me. Dr. Zhao, in his book Catching Up or Leading the Way, we read all this news about the United States trailing in education and China and other people getting ahead of us. It's interesting to note, though, that now China is in the United States studying our extracurricular programs because of all the students that they have who are being successful. They're lacking the confidence and the leadership skills to begin leading businesses and developing patents. So they've got all these smart kids, but they're not seeing any of these kids develop the leadership skills to be successful in a competitive world. So interesting to note that China is trying to copy some of the things that we're doing with extracurricular. Let's look at our staffing, the updates and issues with staffing. We still do not employ anywhere close to what we employed in 2008 before the recession took place. Our staff is smaller, our class sizes are larger. It is beginning to jeopardize some of the opportunities that we give our students. We have adjusted our salary schedules a lot for our support personnel. So we're doing more contracted work to help with staffing. We've tried to make a lot of adjustments with our staffing that we'll talk about a little later. Our facilities. The weakness of our facilities, this building is about 30 years old. It needed a facelift and it needed a better environment. It's also important to note that our current facility can handle about 8% growth. Last year when we did this report, there was room for about 12% growth. On the left side, you can see the projects that we've already completed. In the last 2 years, we've spent about $2.5 million upgrading our facilities. We've put a new roof, we've painted the exterior, we've renovated these restrooms that had not been renovated since the 70s. We've yanked the carpet out. The only carpet that is in the building now are in our libraries. We've improved the lights in the ceiling, putting the new energy efficient lighting throughout the building. We've renovated our lunchroom, which our students are very happy about. We've upgraded our stadium. We're currently working on upgrading our science labs, electrical upgrades, renovating our doors, and hopefully we're looking at traffic flow for the summer of 2013. But the other projects that you see on the right hand of this page are future projects that we currently do not have funding for. Let's look at planning and community support. The strengths of the folks in Aniana support their school. There's great attendance. The community leaders care about the school system. There are no private or church schools that feel the need to establish themselves as a viable alternative. Our parents and our community is happy with our schools and they send their children to our schools. The weaknesses, our tax effort is below average and we do not fund our schools like we should. And we need to do a better job of communicating that. This school system, the strengths of planning, has always maintained financial stability and always achieved. There's always been good leaders at Aniana City. If there's a weakness, we need to develop a flexible and ongoing plan that will really excite our stakeholders and be there as a guide for for all decision makers present and in the future. Let's look at some of our information. Here's our student enrollment You see our growth over the past 10 years, about 16, almost 17%. In the past 3 and 5 years, around the 5% mark. We've grown from 1,279 students now to 1,494. This chart shows that we are in a growing community. Not only just Aniana, but also Blount County. That data is from the Regional Planning Commission. Our facility capacity, we can hold up to about 125 kids per grade. Our student enrollment now is about 8.7% below that number. If we continue to grow at a rate of about 5%, then every 5 years, then we reach our capacity probably within 10 years. And then we have decisions to make. We either have to build new facilities or begin to look at our student population as far as out-of-district students. Here are our demographic changes. You see that we do not have any demographic group that has declined in the past 10 years. The group that has grown the most has been our Hispanic population, that has gone from 149 in 2002 to 324 in 2012. Our African American population has remained the same. We've seen some slight growth with our white population. Our poverty population also has almost doubled. Here are our demographics. Demographics regarding in-district and out-of-district students. 24% of our students come from out-of-district and pay tuition. Poverty and non-poverty students. Here's our end of the year financial balance. We have been able to stabilize after many years of proration in the recession, but we have lost over $1 million since the recession took place. We are now pretty stable, just over $1 million that we're maintaining in our general operations. We are required by the state to maintain for emergencies 1 month of payroll or reserves, which is about $800,000, so we are staying above that state guideline. It's not easy. We are basically working with $500,000 less than what we were working with in 2008. That's mainly reductions from at the state level. In 07-08, we got about $8.3 million from the state. Last year, 7.8, a reduction of about $500,000. We received federal stimulus money for 2 years to offset the loss of revenue. We are, of course, no longer receiving that. We've made the adjustments necessary. Our employees, we've reduced about 16 employees from 2008 to 2012, despite having an increase of 82 more students. If you looked at our operations costs and you compared Aniana in the blue to those other 25 small city school systems, the people who are just like us, these are two measures that the State Department uses to look at operations costs. What are we spending on administrative services? And you see we're over $300,000 less. What we're spending above a line item called OCE that the state gives us for operations, we spend less above that allocation than these other folks are spending, almost $600,000 less. We can't run it any more efficiently. A matter of fact, when you look at these numbers, this is not always good. Sometimes, you need to be spending money to efficiently operate, provide clean buildings, and those types of things. This is just a chart that shows all 25 school systems, and you can look at Aniana. You can see our administrative services, our ranking. We are ranked 24th. In other words, of all the 25 school systems, there is only one other school system that spends less on administrative services, and our operations cost, we spend less than all 25 of those other small city school systems. Spending money, our expenditure reports. This is kind of shocking, and many people don't realize this, but when you look at this and what we spend in just local funds, there are 132 school systems. We are ranked 123rd out of those 132. When you look at total funds that include local, state, and federal dollars, we are next to last in what we spend. There's a reason for that. When you look at the revenue that we're collecting in local funds, we're 95th out of 132. When you just look at city school systems, 57 out of 65. And when you look at total funds, local, state, and federal, next to last again, and also next to last in city school systems. If you play the what if game in local revenue, we get $2,055 per child at Aniana City Schools. The average of the 25 other small city school systems is $2,690. That's $635 more per child that they are spending. What if Aniana spent that same dollar amount multiplied times an enrollment of 1,500 kids? We would have an additional $950,000 to spend on our kid. What if we spent the same as the state, almost $4 million? What if we spent the same as the Gunnersville, Boaz, Piedmont, Jacksonville group, almost $2 million more in local revenue? If you look at total revenue, the numbers just get larger. But we can't control total revenue because it includes federal dollars that's based on poverty and those type things. But this does just give you an idea of how much less money we spend than the other people that we are competing with. Anywhere from $2.5 to $3 million if we were getting the same type funds that they were getting. Our tax effort is measured by meals equivalents. Our meals equivalence is 22.91. That includes 16.5 meals of property tax. The other a little over 6 meals comes from the equivalence of about 6 meals comes from the 1 cent county sales tax that we get. We only get 15% of that because we only have 15% of the students. And when you compare our meals equivalence of 22.91, it is well below the state average, the other 25 small city school systems, and our other 2 comparative groups. Compared to the other 25 school systems, we're 25th. We have the worst tax effort. This just is a financial profile report. 2008 and 9 was the last time the state gave out these reports that actually graded school systems. And if you see at the bottom of this page, we received a D in our funding efforts for our schools. It is my understanding that the state will go back and begin these reports again in 2013 and 14. But this is the last time they provided such reports. When you look at our revenues and our expenditures for students, those are the descriptions that you see. A grade of D, one of the worst or next to last. It makes you wonder what we would do if we gave those same descriptions for our academic performance. I don't think our community would stand by if we were receiving a grade of D on academics. Our band's one of the best bands in the state of Alabama, and people brag about our band everywhere you go. But what if we had 40-something kids in our band instead of 140? And what if, when you listen to them, you say, well, that was one of the worst bands I ever heard? I don't think our community would stand for that. What if our football team was finishing 1-9 and we're never making the playoffs? I don't think we would stand for that. So if we're truly committed to excellence as a guiding principle, and we understand that excellence is worth the sacrifice, and if we truly have a vision that we want to have a great school system and live in a great community, we need to really look at how we're funding these 9 essential strands and how we're reaching our goal. And we have in our plan put together a package where we feel like to fully fund all the plans of our plan of excellence, you're talking about $1 million. And here it is how we would spend that $1 million. We would put $20,000 towards in safety, towards the social worker and the schools program to deal with those students who need the attention because of social and mental issues. I continue to say that those are the most dangerous situations in schools, are those kids who have those type of issues. $500,000 in technology to reach one vision, which we're going to talk about a little further. $250,000 in staffing to add back about 3 teachers and some custodial help. We have very little flexibility with our teachers now. We just need a little help being able to put back some teachers so that our class sizes aren't as overcrowded and we don't begin to lose some course offerings at the high school level. and $215,000 a year for facilities to deal with our growth issues and planning. Let's talk about One Vision, the technology piece. Again, I mentioned this earlier, laptops for every kid in high school, iPads, giving our kids and our teachers the tools that you're seeing in other high-performing school systems. And there's the cost, $500,000 a year. The majority of that is for a 4-year lease with Apple, where we would lease this equipment for 4 years. Then every 4 years we'd evaluate that equipment and move on to the next or newest thing or continue the process. We've got $100,000 for added personnel, the technicians and the coordinators that we would need to help run it. The learning management system, where kids would post their assignments and communicate with teachers, and this is what our kids are doing in college. $12,000 for protective cases, and then $40,000 for insurance or replacement costs. Issues for this year, as I see it, 2 big issues. The new college and career ready standards, especially at the high school level, and the changes and adapting to those new standards, which are much more rigorous, and then funding our plan of excellence. We believe now is the time to talk about funding our plan. I don't think we've ever communicated such compelling data. I think we're being successfully, our success academically and extracurricular are very strong. We've been relatively free of controversy. This is all about will we maintain the status quo or we start looking aggressively to the future, one that I believe includes a growing student population and the need to advance technology as part of our learning environment. Our board has been absorbing this information. We've been planning and adjusting for over a year. But that last bullet, if we're going to provide for our students the same that the Colemans and the Auburns and the Vestavias and the Fort Paynes and the progressive high-achieving school systems, we are limited by our current tax structure and current practices. This is just an example, and I've used other successful small city school systems, Jacksonville, Piedmont, Guntersville, and Boaz. As you can see, we pay 16.5 mills of property tax. We collect 1 cent of the county sales tax, and as you can see on the left, because of our enrollment, we have 15% of the kids in Blount County, so we receive 15% of the 1 cent sales tax, which nets us about $525,000. We do not collect a district or a city sales tax. If we did, 1 cent would equal about $1.2 million. So let's look at how we compared to these other 4 cities. If we were like Guntersville and Boaz, they collect no county tax, but they get 1% of their district or city sales tax. If we were like them, we would be collecting $1.2 million and not receiving the $525,000, so we would be collecting $700,000 more in taxes. If we are like Jacksonville and Piedmont, that we collect 1% of the county tax, but based on their ADM and based on the fact that they're in Calhoun County that has Anniston, Oxford, those revenue generating cities, they receive a much larger amount of funding, 1.2 in Jacksonville and Piedmont. And in those 2 places where they collect no city or district tax, they do get an appropriation from the city council, $240,000 at Jacksonville, plus the city takes care of their debt service on the high school, and in Piedmont the city takes care of their debt service, estimated about $200,000. So Jacksonville and Piedmont, although they are restricted like us by not receiving a district or city sales tax, the value of their county tax is much greater, and they are getting help from their city. When you look at mills equivalents, you see that ours is 22.91, which basically means of all the revenue collected, that 72% of our funding is coming from property tax. So the 22.91 is a number that gives the mills equivalents of our total revenue. 72% of that comes from the property tax, or the 16.5 mills. If you look at these other school systems, this is what you normally see. About half their funding comes from property tax, And let's just use Jacksonville as an example. 18.5 mills of property tax, but their mills equivalents, when you add in all the other things they get from their city or the county tax, means that about 50 raises their mills equivalents to 36.19, or about 51% comes from property tax. And you see these others, 52, 49, 46. They all get in-kind services from their city. And when you look at local spending per child, you see that we are far behind that. Piedmont this past year over almost $6,000. I do have a line through that because that was a one-year situation where they got a lot of debt service paid by the city that kind of inflated that number. Aniana has in the past supported their school systems. In the 70s, they voted to allocate 1 cent to the schools, which at some time ended. And we did receive $1 million from the City Council in 1997 and then again in 2007. But at this time, we are not a part of their annual budget. So here are the actions the Aniana City Schools are taking to meet this plan of excellence. A three-tiered approach. Number one, we're asking the cities to pass our citizens to pass a property tax increase. We're asking the city to include the school system as part of their budget to receive a percentage of the sales tax. And we're going to work to make our school foundation one of the strongest in the state of Alabama. Here's how it breaks down. The $1 million that we think we need to add. On the left, the revenue needed, it would cost us $500,000 to implement One Vision, our technology component. How would we pay for that? 5 mil property tax, $340,000, and then either funding from our school foundation or the city to fill in the additional $175,000. These other parts of our plan that we would like to that we see as weaknesses that we're currently not doing, the additional staffing, which is $250,000, the school safety or the facility would have to come from city funding. We have a request, a suggestion. Of course, we are not in charge of the city. That's the city leaders. But when we look at it, we know that the city collects about $3.7 million through their 3 cents of sales tax, meaning that 1 cent is equal to roughly about $1.2 million. If we were to receive half of 1 cent or 50 cents of the sales tax dedicated to Aniana City Schools, that would bring us in about $615,000 a year. We realize that's a big chunk for the city. Of course, we would be willing to assume some of their debt responsibilities and reimburse them for the cost of the school resource offers that's provided to us, meaning a real cost of over $300,000. We would then use those funds for technology, the social worker program, and additional staffing, and then 2017 would add the $220,000 once their city debt is paid off, and would use that towards our facilities. Again, that would just be one way that it could be done. If that were to occur, we'd like for you to see how that would change our revenue. If we are successful in increase 5 mills of property tax, and if we were to receive half of 1 cent of the city's 3 cents of sales tax, here's what it would look like. Our property tax would go from 16.5 to 21.5. Our mills equivalents from 22.91 to 36.9. Now, instead of 72% of our revenue coming from property tax, 59% would come from that, and our local revenue per child would go from $2,055 to $2,713. Here are lots of other comparative groups that you can look at, but I really like for you to focus on the comparison 25. Let's just talk about where that puts us when we look at the other 25 school systems. As you can see, their mills equivalence is 39.72, still higher than ours would be at 36.69. They would still be receiving 48% of theirs is from property tax, 52% from other sources being city sales tax or annual appropriations from the city or district taxes. So their spending per child would be $2,690, and if you go back and look at ours at $2,713, we're basically asking that we be just the average, just the same average as the other 25 school systems that we compete with. We're still not in the league with what these other people are spending per child. The city system, the 65 city systems that we have, their average, the state average, or our other comparison groups, where you say they're spending over $3,000 per child. Again, these are the other people. We're just trying to be average and compete with these 25 school systems that you see listed here. Community support, item number 6 on our plan of excellence says, we believe that our local funding effort should be competitive with comparable school systems and with the surrounding systems with whom we wish to compete. We believe the community should support the necessary funding to support our goal of achieving excellence within each one of our essential strands. Here are the outcomes with the proposed revenue increases. Aniana citizen will be paying 21.5 mills of property tax, 50 mills total, and 9 cents sales tax. Still, Aniana would be an attractive location for businesses and families. Low taxes, strong schools. A citizen would pay $50 more in property tax for a home valued at $100,000. The city of Aniana would have to make adjustments to their current municipal budget. Other outcomes, our revenue per child would go to $27.13. We would now be ranked 11th when compared to the other 25 small city school systems. When you compare us to the 132, we'd be ranked 44th in local revenue, still ranked 118th in total revenue. When you look at just city school systems, we would be 32nd, right dead in the middle in local revenue, still 59th in total revenue. Another outcome, our plan of excellence would move from being not funded to funded. Our technology initiative called One Vision would be funded. And we believe that the people of Aniana know the importance of doing what's right for their children, and because I think that our children are our most important thing. And it's all about lateral accountability. The culture of the organization is determined by the majority, and it truly is about the decisions that are being made by the adults. Our schools are not defined by the behaviors of our kids. They are defined by the behaviors of the adults. What are the decisions that we're making that provide the guidance and the capabilities so that our students can be successful? Our world is full of cynicism when it's talking about governments and taxes and those types of things, but at some point in time as a community we have to trust that we've one another, that we're doing the right thing. We believe that we have a plan, and now we're trying to create the capacity to carry out that plan so that we can complete a vision for our school system so that our children can be competitive. We do think it's embarrassing when we're ranked at the bottom of anything. That's not what we want for our kids. And we want our kids, when they go off to college or to the workforce, we want them to be as prepared as any student from any school in the state of Alabama. This concludes our presentation. We thank you for your support of Aniana City Schools.